Welcome to my channel. You're not just a viewer, you're the reason we're here. If everyone who watches subscribes, we'll build an awesome community. Your support drives us, without it we're nothing. So hit subscribe and let's make something incredible together. Thank you, let's dive in. The church bells toll softly in the distance, their sound drifting through the cracked window of a dimly lit hospital room. Xenia lies in bed, her pale face streaked with sweat, her breathing shallow. A storm rages outside, rattling the panes, and for a moment she thinks she hears footsteps. She turns her head, and there he is. Kir standing in the shadows, his clothes damp, and clinging to his frame, his eyes hollow, yet fixed on her. She blinks, her heart racing, unsure if this is a dream or something more. He steps closer, his voice low and trembling. "Forgive me," he whispers. Xenia's chest tightens with a flood of emotions, relief, fear, love, and she reaches out, her fingers brushing his cold hand. In that instant she's pulled back, not just to the moment she cast the spell that bound him to her, but to the unraveling of her life that led her here. Let's rewind. Days earlier, Xenia's world was a quieter place, though not a simpler one. She worked in a small dress boutique, her nimble fingers threading needles through silk and satin, crafting beauty from fabric. It was here, amidst the hum of her sewing machine, that she met Sonia, a bride-to-be glowing with anticipation. Sonia stood before a mirror, her wedding dress catching the light as Xenia pinned the hem. "What about your wedding?" Sonia asked, her tone light, curious. Xenia paused, her smile faltering. "I haven't had one," she admitted, her voice soft. In the corner, Paulina, her toddler daughter, let out a sudden wail, breaking the moment. Xenia hurried to soothe her, but it was Victor, Sonia's fiancé, who stepped in, scooping Paulina up with a gentle ease. Practicing for fatherhood, Sonia teased, and Xenia caught Victor's eye, a quiet gratitude passing between them. That night, though, gratitude turned to ash. Alone with Paulina in their cramped apartment, Xenia dialed Kir's number again and again. No answer. Her stomach knotted as she bundled Paulina into her stroller and headed to his studio, a place once filled with shared dreams. The door creaked open, and there he was. Kir, her sculptor boyfriend, tangled in an embrace with another woman. The air left her lungs. She stumbled back, Paulina's stroller rattling against the floor, and Kir's head snapped up. "What are you doing here?" He barked, his voice sharp with irritation. Xenia didn't answer, she couldn't. She fled, tears blurring the streets as she ran. The next day at the boutique, her hands trembled over a seam. Kate, her co-worker, noticed the red rims of her eyes. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Xenia spilled it all. The betrayal, the other woman, the sting of Kir's words. Kate listened, then leaned in close. "Pretend it didn't happen," she advised. "Act like everything's fine. He'll come back." Xenia nodded, wanting to believe it, but the ache in her chest wouldn't let go. At home, her mother rocked Paulina, while Xenia sifted through a pile of Kir's sketches. Her fingers froze on a drawing of her, the woman from the studio. The lines were tender, deliberate, a portrait of affection Xenia hadn't felt in months. She choked on a sob, and her mother snatched the sketchbook away. "Stop torturing yourself," she snapped. "You can't make him stay. Unless," she paused, her eyes glinting, "unless you cast a spell to bind him." Xenia laughed weakly, thinking it a joke, but her mother's face was stone-cold serious. The idea lingered, a seed planted in her grief. Desperation drove her next move. Kir wouldn't answer her calls, so she went to his parents' house, Paulina in tow. His mother appeared on the balcony, peering down with cold indifference. "I don't know where he is," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You should have kept him happier." Xenia's cheeks burned as she turned away, only to spot Kir moments later leaving his studio with her. She called out, her voice cracking. "We need to talk. Alone." He rolled his eyes but followed her inside. "I won't put up with this," she said, her hands shaking. "You can't sleep around and expect me to stay." Kir's face darkened. "I don't want you anymore," he spat. "You don't own me just because of Paulina." Her anger erupted, and she lunged, clawing at his face. He shoved her back, blood trickling from a scratch on his cheek. Wiping it with a handkerchief, he flung the stained cloth at her and stormed off with his new lover. Xenia clutched the fabric, her tears soaking into the blood. That handkerchief became her lifeline. She sought out Azza, a gypsy woman rumored to wield strange powers. In Azza's cluttered kitchen, the air thick with the scent of herbs and meat, Xenia poured out her story. Azza's knife paused mid-slice. "Do you want him forever?" she asked, her eyes piercing. Xenia nodded, her voice a whisper. "Yes." Azza outlined the spell. "Find a couple with true, strong love, cast it during their wedding in a church, use the handkerchief and her own blood. But beware," Azza warned, grabbing Xenia's hand and slicing her palm. "If your love isn't real, the spirits will turn on you." She pressed a piece of raw meat into Xenia's bleeding hand. "Cast it before this rots." Xenia left unsettled but resolute. Sonia and Victor's wedding day arrived, a perfect canvas for Xenia's plan. She slipped into the church attic as the ceremony began below, her heart pounding. She laid out Azza's items. 2 candles twisted together, the handkerchief, the meat. She pricked her finger, mixing her blood with Kir's, and set the cloth ablaze. The The flames licked upward as she forced the rancid meat into her mouth, gagging but swallowing. Below, the congregation cheered. Sonia and Victor were married. Xenia's vision blurred, her body weakening. She stumbled down the stairs, collapsing in the newlyweds' path. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Victor rushed to her side. In the hospital, Sonia sat in her wedding dress, her face streaked with tears. Oleg, an old friend, comforted her as she lamented the ruined day. "It's all bad luck," she sobbed. Nearby, Xenia stirred Victor at her bedside. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, guilt gnawing at her. "Rest," he said kindly, his doctor's coat crisp against the chaos. He left to find Sonia, only to hear muffled sounds from a storage room. Peering inside, he froze. Sonia and Oleg locked in a kiss. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, retreating to Xenia's room. That night, the storm broke the hospital's calm. A window banged open, mud smearing the sill. Xenia rose to close it, then turned. And there was Kir. Disheveled, repentant, he begged her forgiveness. Relief washed over her. The spell had worked. She forgave him, and he carried her from the hospital back to his studio. They spent the night wrapped in each other, the past seemingly erased. Morning light bathed the studio as Kir gazed at Xenia. "Pose for me," he urged, captivated by her beauty. She did, basking in his attention. Later, they visited her mother Paulina in her arms. A broken window from the storm needed fixing, and Kir nailed boards over it while Xenia offered her mother a place to stay. Alone with Kir, her mother hesitated, but he cut in sharply. "You'd be in the way." She declined, and Xenia let it drop, uneasy but silent. Kir's obsession grew. He sculpted her likeness, frustration mounting when it wasn't perfect. "Let me mold your face," he pleaded. Xenia resisted. She had work, but he persuaded her. Plaster coated her skin, cool and heavy. Paulina cried and Xenia strained to move, but Kir hushed her, rolling the stroller aside. He peeled off the plaster and pulled her close, their intimacy raw and urgent, her senses muffled beneath the mask. At the boutique, tension flared. Sonia stormed in, returning her dress, and spotted Xenia. "You ruined everything," she hissed, blaming her for Victor's departure. Xenia reeled, guilt twisting her gut. She dialed Azza, but a garbled voice answered, and pain stabbed her stomach. A rustle behind the racks drew her closer. A figure in a wedding dress hung limp, then lunged. Xenia stumbled back, the vision fading but her fear lingering. Home was no refuge. Kir and Paulina were gone. At the studio, masks of her face lined the walls, eerie and lifeless. Paulina sat alone in a corner, abandoned. Kir appeared and Xenia confronted him. "Do you even love us?" she demanded. "Of course," he said, but his tone shifted. "You're always busy. Let go of everything else." She echoed his past words. "I'm not your property." His anger flared, smashing a mask. She flinched, and he softened, pulling her into an embrace. Victor appeared at the boutique, admiring Xenia's work. Their hands brushed, and he drew back, awkward. Then pain struck her again, and another pair of hands gripped hers, unseen, cold. She gasped, and Victor offered a ride to the hospital. Kir intercepted, jealousy igniting a brawl. Xenia separated them, and Kir chastened, bandaged his hand with Victor's gauze. That night, he drove her to his parents' house, proposing to mend things. Xenia hesitated, asking for time. His mother Elena laughed mockingly, and Kir snapped. He demanded her ring, an heirloom. "She's not worthy," Elena sneered. Kir grabbed scissors, severing her finger to claim the ring. His father lunged, but Kir beat him back, sliding the bloodied ring onto Xenia's finger. "Run!" his father yelled, tackling Kir. Xenia fled, but the gate slammed shut, trapping her. Kir approached, calm and menacing. "Going to Paulina?" he asked. She nodded, trembling, but he didn't answer. Paulina was alone again in the studio. Xenia scooped her up, tears streaming as Kir insisted. "We belong together." She confessed the spell, desperate for him to understand. He ignored her, knocking her out. She awoke in a tub of plaster, watching in horror as he poured it over Paulina. Strength surged. She struck him, grabbed her daughter, and ran. A car nearly hit them, but the driver stopped, offering help. Kir pursued on his bike, pounding the windows, but the woman swerved, losing him at a fork in the road. She dropped Xenia at Victor's, where safety felt fleeting but real. Victor rocked Paulina to sleep, a tender moment amid the storm. The next day at the hospital, Sonia apologized to him, but he brushed her off, stepping into an elevator. A corpse's hand caught his eye, Kir's. A co-worker confirmed a fatal head injury. Back home, Xenia saw Kir's shadow haunting her. Victor returned, revealing Kir's death, and took her to the morgue. She wept over his body, and it stirred, pulling her into the drawer. She escaped, terror clawing at her. Sonia confronted them, but Victor explained Kir's death. He drove Xenia to Azza's, where she confessed the spell. Azza couldn't undo it, so they used Victor to summon the demon. It possessed him, demanding Xenia's soul. Violence erupted, but Azza's mother intervened, saving them. Victor left done with the madness. Azza's mother suggested reversing the spell. Recreate the wedding, trick the demon. Xenia rallied Sonia and Victor, who reluctantly agreed after Sonia's own encounter with Kir's ghost. In the church, Xenia unwound the candles, but a force hurled her back. Sonia possessed attacked, but Oz's mother exorcised the demon. Sonia spoke in Xenia's mother's voice. Paulina was gone. At home, a mask led them to the studio. Victor freed Xenia's real mother, nailed to the floor as Xenia found Paulina. KIR, revealed as the imposter, struck Victor. To save him, Xenia offered her soul and KIR vanished. She reassured Victor, then drowned herself in plaster, a final sacrifice. A vision flickered. Xenia, Victor, and Paulina happy together. But reality returned. Xenia walked an aisle in a black dress, stone figures watching. At the altar, KIR waited, her fate sealed. Thank you for watching.